Welcome to today's deep dive. I am just so thrilled you're joining us.
Yeah, it's really great to be here.
Because if you're feeling completely overwhelmed right now...
Oh, and who isn't?
Right. Like if your schedule is packed to the absolute minute, or your inbox is just this source of daily dread...
Yes.
And you're exhausted from endless social media comparisons, well, you're in exactly the right place. Our mission today is to cut straight through all of that modern noise.
Absolutely.
We are exploring an ancient Japanese philosophy that really serves as a profound antidote to the chaos of our times. It's called Wabi Sabi.
Which represents this fundamental shift in how you view the world. And to guide us through this, we're looking at a pretty brilliant synthesis of the topic today.
Yeah, we have this massive stack of notes and excerpts from a book called Wabi Sabi, Japanese Wisdom for a Perfectly Imperfect Life.
Written by Beth Kempton.
Exactly. She's a Japanologist who spent over 2 decades deeply immersed in Japanese culture. She lived there, worked there, and actually studied traditional arts like papermaking and the tea ceremony.
And that background is so important. She takes these incredibly nuanced aesthetic principles and translates them into a framework you can actually use.
Which is exactly what we need.
Because that unique lens takes these abstract ideas out of the museum and puts them right into your living room.
Totally. And to get us into the right headspace, I want to set the scene using this really vivid image Kempton shares early on.
Oh, the temple story?
Yes. Picture a freezing cold December night in Quito, Japan's ancient capital. She's at the Shurin Temple.
Which is wild because this place is just, 10 minutes away from the bustling neon-lit entertainment district of Gion?
Exactly, but it feels like a completely different universe. So she's sitting on a wooden veranda polished by 800 years of fixed steps.
Wow.
She reaches down and picks up a fallen momiji leaf, a Japanese maple leaf. It's blushing burgundy, curling at the edges, crinkled and papery like an old photograph.
It's such a striking image.
And in that quiet moment, holding this dying leaf, she feels a profound sense of contentment, tinged with just a hint of melancholy, because she knows this fleeting moment will never return.
You know, if you close your eyes and imagine standing in a serene, softly lit bamboo grove, you start to capture the essence of what that moment feels like.
Yeah. You really do.
But here's the trick with Wabi Sabi. It's an intuitive response to beauty. For Japanese people, it's something deeply felt, but rarely spoken out loud.
Right. I read that it's not even formally defined in some dictionaries.
Exactly. If you open the Kujian, which is the most authoritative Japanese dictionary, you will not even find a combined entry for the term Wabi Sabi.
That's fascinating.
It lives in the cultural atmosphere, not on paper. So today, our deep dive is going to explore not just what this mysterious concept is, but why embracing the impermanent, imperfect, and incomplete nature of your life provides a vital path forward.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because you really cannot understand Wabi Sabi without understanding its revolutionary origins. We have to rewind to the mid-16th century.
A very turbulent time.
Extremely. While that period was driving the Renaissance in Europe and a massive technological boom in Ming Dynasty China,
Japan was caught in a brutal, century-long civil war.
Right. It was a time defined by complete instability. Famines, fires, natural disasters, and intense poverty were just the norm.
The country was ruled by powerful military feudal lords, the daimyo, and their samurai warriors. Life was incredibly precarious.
Because life was so fragile, many higher-ranking samurai and wealthy merchants turned to Zen Buddhism and the ritual of the tea ceremony to find a moment of peace.
But a major cultural clash was brewing right in the middle of this.
Oh, big time. On one side, you had this incredibly ostentatious warlord named Toyotomi Hideyoshi.
He's the one who built the gold tea house, right?
Yes, an all-gold tea house. Gold walls, expensive imported Chinese utensils, the works. It was the 16th century equivalent of wearing your bank account on your sleeve.
He was using tea entirely as a mechanism for political power and status display.
But Hideyoshi had a tea master named Sen no Rikyu, and Rikyu quietly started a rebellion.
Not with swords, but with aesthetics.
Exactly. He completely stripped the tea ceremony down. He shrank the tea room to a tiny 3-square-meter space. He made the windows incredibly small to lower the lighting.
And he ditched the gold.
Completely. Instead of pure gold and expensive imports, he used peasant bowls fashioned by a local tile maker. He used a simple bamboo scoop.
I love the detail about the water container.
Oh, yeah. Instead of an ornate bronze water container, he upcycled a humble wooden well bucket. He placed a single seasonal flower in a bamboo vase. He changed the entire culture of tea from worshiping wealth to worshiping simplicity.
What's fascinating here is how Riki's radical shift connects to the linguistic roots of the words themselves.
How so?
Well, if we break it down, the word wabi originally had a very grim meaning. It meant wretched, lonely, or poor.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah. But through this cultural shift in the tea room, it evolved to mean finding supreme beauty and spiritual richness in absolute simplicity. It became about detaching from the heavy burden of the material world.
Okay, so that's wabi. What about sabi?
Sabi is about the passage of time. It's the visual manifestation of growth, decay, and the beautiful patina of age. Weathering, tarnishing, the character that an object gains from simply surviving in the world.
So it's less about the physical object you're looking at and more about the lens through which you choose to view it.
Precisely. And this directly applies to your own life today. We live in a society that constantly pressures us to build our own versions of the gold tea house.
The loudest, the shiniest, the newest.
Exactly. Riki's rebellion reminds us that true, profound beauty often lies in the quiet and the humble.
That aesthetic rebellion brings us perfectly into how this philosophy can literally change the physical spaces you live and work in. Kempton introduces this beautiful Japanese phrase, igokochi ga yoe.
It translates to a place for a happy heart.
Place for a happy heart. I just love that. It describes that deeply comforting feeling of just being at ease in your home.
Which makes sense, because the spaces we inhabit fundamentally shape our internal state. If your environment is chaotic, your mind usually follows suit.
To understand how to build that happy heart place, Kempton spoke with Dr. Teruaki Matsuzaki. He's one of Japan's foremost architectural historians.
And he talked about a core concept in Japanese architecture called ma.
Yes.
Ma is a brilliant concept. It translates roughly to space, but it's much more than just an empty room. It's the natural distance between things. It's the pause.
The intentional emptiness.
Right. It's the emptiness that gives the objects around it meaning. Think of it like the silence between notes in a piece of music. Without the silence, you just have noise.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Dr. Matsuzaki makes this compelling point about aesthetic genius.
Well, let's hear it.
He argues that true aesthetic genius means intentionally leaving something unfinished so that the viewer's imagination has room to step in and complete it.
It's an invitation.
It is, but I struggle with this though. When Dr. Matsuzaki talks about leaving things unfinished so the imagination can step in, my modern instinct is to fix the unfinished thing. Like, if a room isn't perfectly symmetrical or fully decorated, I feel this urge to buy something to fill the gap. How do we actually override that instinct?
By recognizing that perfection creates a barrier. If a space looks too pristine, like one of those untouchable, unlivable rooms in a high-end design magazine, it actually fails on a human level.
Because it's not real.
Right. It fails because it leaves no room for you. You feel like you cannot touch anything, or you might ruin the illusion. To override the instinct to quote-unquote fix everything, you have to practice what Kempton calls soulful simplicity.
So it's not about throwing everything away and living in a sterile white box.
Not at all. Cold minimalism can be just as oppressive as clutter. Soulful simplicity means keeping the treasured items that actually tell a story about who you are.
Allowing for shadows and natural light to play in your home, rather than blasting every corner with artificial light.
Exactly. Don't cram every single shelf and drawer to the brim. If your physical space is uncluttered, your mind suddenly has the space to breathe. You don't need a magazine cover house. You need a home that warmly accommodates your perfectly imperfect life.
Which brings us to perhaps the most freeing concept in this entire deep dive, letting go of the illusion of perfection altogether.
This is a huge one.
Kempton shares this vivid memory of visiting the famous Tsukubai, a traditional stone wash basin, at the Rosanji Temple in Quito.
The one tucked away in that quiet enclave of mossy rocks.
That's the one. Carved around the central square hole of the basin are 4 characters. When you read them together, they form the phrase, "Where Tarataru Oshiru."
I only know plenty. Or more poetically, I have everything I need.
I have everything I need. Imagine walking past that basin every day and internalizing that message. We spend so much of our cognitive energy focusing entirely on what we lack.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, modern society operates as a highly effective marketing machine dedicated to selling us a perfect life. We are constantly sold this predictable, highly stylized version of human existence.
Wrinkle-free faces, effortlessly well-behaved children.
Flawlessly curated social media feeds. But that vision of perfection completely eliminates the hard-earned, messy experiences of actual reality.
It's exhausting just thinking about it.
The author quotes Frank Ostaseski, the founder of the Zen Hospice Project, who said something that really anchors this idea. Wholeness does not mean perfection. It means no part left out.
No part left out. That makes me think of Kempton's story about going to the Sento, the public bathhouse, in a snowy town called Hiratakayama.
Oh, the bathhouse experience is so grounding.
It really is. If you have never been to a Japanese public bath, you leave absolutely everything in a locker. Your clothes, your phone, your wallet, your job title, your social status. You walk into the bathing area completely naked.
Kempton notes how incredibly leveling that experience is.
Stripped of all our armor and accumulated possessions, we are all just human bodies. Bodies with scars, wrinkles, asymmetrical features, and a history of imperfections. It is a stark reminder of our shared, flawed humanity.
It strips away all the pretense. And this is a vital moment for you to reflect. How much energy are you expending trying to force your life into an elusive, perfect timeline?
We're all guilty of it.
Acceptance, in the Wabi Sabi sense, is not about giving up. It's not apathy. It simply means acknowledging the truth of the present moment, saying, this is exactly where I am right now. This is the reality of the situation.
Once you stop fighting reality and accept the broken vase, the struggling project at work, or the physical scar, you can finally choose your next step with clarity. You move from a state of resistance to a state of resilience.
And nowhere is that resilience more necessary than in our careers, our relationships, and how we process failure.
Let's go back to the tea room for a second to see how this plays out with other people. Sen no Rikyu designed a specific door for his tiny tea room called the Nijiriguchi.
The crawling-in entrance.
Yes. It was so small that even the highest-ranking, most fearsome samurai had to leave his long swords on a rack outside, bow his head, and physically crawl into the room.
It was a brilliant physical mechanism to enforce humility and equality. Once you crawled through that door, the hierarchy of the outside world vanished. Everyone inside was simply a human being sharing the present moment.
That deep sense of equality is built on 4 core principles of the tea ceremony: wa, kei, sei, and jaku. Harmony, respect, purity, and tranquility.
These aren't just rules for drinking tea.
No, they are an incredible framework for navigating modern relationships.
They absolutely are. If we take wa, or harmony, it's about being sensitive to the people around you and deliberately removing unnecessary friction.
Like picking your battles.
Exactly. In a modern context, harmony might mean recognizing when an argument with your partner is just ego-driven and choosing to de-escalate rather than having to be right.
And then there's kei, respect. Not just respect for elders or bosses, but respect for the true nature of the people in your life.
When you approach relationships with respect and say purity of intention, you stop demanding perfection from your spouse, your friends, or your children.
You stop trying to mold them into your ideal image.
And you start appreciating them for the complex, imperfect people they actually are. When you achieve that, jaku, or tranquility, naturally follows.
It seems like we desperately need to apply that grace to our professional lives as well.
Definitely.
We have developed this incredibly toxic idea that a career must be a straight line pointing upward, constantly accelerating. If you aren't doing more than you did last year, you are somehow failing.
That linear mindset is a recipe for severe burnout. Kempton introduces a concept from the traditional arts called johaki. It refers to 3 different speeds of action: slow, a little faster, and fast.
It's the realization that you simply cannot operate at top speed all the time.
A career is not a sprint. It's cyclical.
Yes. There is a season to push hard and operate at that fast pace, but there must also be a season to pull back, rest, and gather inspiration at a slower pace.
You have to learn to vary your effort level based on the season of your life, rather than demanding relentless, unbroken productivity.
Which brings up something tricky.
This raises an important question. What happens when we inevitably mess up? Japan actually has a very well-documented cultural aversion to public failure. We see CEOs publicly bowing an apology and students attending high-pressure cram schools.
Yeah, how does that intense fear of failure square with the forgiving nature of Wabi Sabi?
That is a fascinating paradox. How do you reconcile a culture of perfectionism with a philosophy that celebrates the imperfect? True Wabi Sabi teaches us that because life is inherently incomplete and impermanent, achieving a flawless outcome is literally impossible.
Right.
Therefore, the only actual failure is avoiding the creative journey altogether out of fear. Kempton highlights a beautiful metaphor using the concept of fusheim.
The bamboo nodes.
Yes, a fusheim is the hard joint or node on a bamboo shoot. It's tough and compressed. Every time you experience a setback, a rejection, or a failure, it feels like hitting one of those hard nodes.
Yeah.
It feels like your progress has stopped.
But biologically, that node is exactly what gives the bamboo its incredible strength and flexibility.
Without the Fushime, the bamboo would snap in the wind. Every failure is just a tough point that provides the structural integrity for your next stage of growth.
The failure is the joint that helps you grow taller. That framing shifts the entire experience of making a mistake.
It really does.
It leads us perfectly into the final area where Wabi Sabi can completely alter our perspective, how we cherish moments and how we view aging. I laughed out loud at a highly relatable story Kempton shares about standing in a UK airport.
Oh, the duty-free shop.
Yes. She is literally on her way to Japan to research a book about the profound beauty of imperfection, acceptance, and the passage of time. And what is she holding in her hand? A 40-pound pot of anti-aging cream.
It captures the modern irony perfectly. We are deeply conditioned to fight the natural passage of time at every turn. We view aging as a problem to be solved or a disease to be cured rather than a privilege to be experienced.
She ultimately puts the cream back, saving herself the 40 pounds, and decides to embrace the journey. Later in the book, she shares an incredible conversation with a 94-year-old woman named Mineo Kani.
Mineo's mother and aunt were actually famous in Japan for living to be 108 and 107.
So Kempton asks her the ultimate question: what is the secret to a long, happy life?
Her answer cuts right through all the complicated wellness advice we hear today. She said, the root of all misery is worrying about what you do not have.
Happiness begins with immense gratitude for what is already present in your life.
Don't constantly look outside your life for satisfaction. Look inside it.
Which brings us to what Kempton calls the Wabi Sabi metronome. The seasons in nature act as a metronome for our lives. They provide a constant, steady rhythm that calls us back to the present moment.
Wabi Sabi is essentially a gentle gauge for noticing these exquisite, fleeting moments before they disappear.
It trains your attention.
It is noticing the smell of a campfire clinging to your jacket the morning after. It is the palpable, electric pause just before the arrival's doors open in an airport and you see someone you love.
It's the sudden realization that this specific moment with this specific light and these specific people will never happen exactly this way again.
When you apply that lens, the ordinary becomes deeply extraordinary.
So what does this all mean? When we take all these sources, all these concepts, from the stripped-down tea room of Sen-no Riki to the bamboo forest and the public bathhouse, what is the core takeaway for our listener?
It's a big question.
I think Kempton nails it when she says that Wabi Sabi is essentially a lot like love.
Like love.
Yeah, it is a loving, forgiving appreciation for life exactly as it is. It is embracing the reality that you, your home, your career, and everyone around you are entirely impermanent, wonderfully imperfect, and beautifully incomplete.
It allows for a profound sigh of relief. You can finally stop performing and just be.
Yeah.
This entire discussion reminds me of the 11th century Japanese poet Seishu Nagon.
Oh, from the Pillow Book.
Yes. She didn't write about Wabi Sabi explicitly. The term didn't really exist in that way yet, but in the Pillow Book, to anchor herself to the present moment, she used to write these highly specific poetic lists.
What kind of lists?
She would write lists titled things like Things That Do Not Linger. It was a deliberate way of training her brain to notice the fleeting, impermanent beauty of the world around her.
Things that do not linger. That is incredibly evocative.
So I have a challenge for you, the listener.
Yeah.
What if, right now, wherever you are, you mentally wrote your own list?
I love this.
Try writing a list titled, Things I Only Notice When I Close My Eyes. What do you hear in the room with you? What do you feel against your skin? How might adopting that hyper-specific fleeting lens permanently alter the way you view the messy, imperfect space you are sitting in today?
What a fantastic challenge to carry with us. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the world of Wabi Sabi. We hope you can step away from the overwhelm today and find a quiet, perfectly imperfect moment of your own.